Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jason Doucette. I am president of the Scleroderma Atlantic, and I'd like to welcome you here this afternoon. And for joining us for today's webinar, Life with Scleroderma Personal Stories. We do want to thank our sponsors for making our webinar series possible, which is the Government of Canada's Emergency Community Support Fund and the Community Foundation of Nova Scotia. Scleroderma Atlantic in no way endorses any drugs or treatments shared within this webinar, and it is recommended that all drugs and treatments be discussed with your physician for proper evaluation and treatment. So today's webinar is all about personal stories. We're very fortunate and lucky to have a number of folks around the table here this afternoon who are going to be sharing their stories and their life and their journey with scleroderma. So first of all, I do want to say thank you to everyone who's agreed to join us here today, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing all of the stories. We will have an opportunity for questions. Questions will be able to be asked at the end of the webinar by using the Q&A icon, and you'll be able to see through those slides exactly where that is. So either at the bottom of your screen or at the top, depending on what kind of device you are using. So certainly we welcome your questions. What we're going to be doing here this afternoon is each of our panelists are going to approximately have 5 minutes to share some of their story or to share their journey with scleroderma. And then what we'll be doing is we'll be opening the floor to any questions that you may have to ask to any of the panelists based on the stories that they've told, or if you'd like to ask a question to any, all of them, certainly feel free to do that as well. What I will do is I'll do a quick introduction to each of our panelists and then hand the floor over to them to allow us to give us their story. So first of all, very happy to welcome Amy Gietzen, who is a scleroderma patient for over 20 years from Buffalo, New York. She's a board member for the Scleroderma Tri-State Chapter and for the Ann Steffens Foundation. Amy has worked closely with SPIN on their patient advisory boards over the last 7 years. She's been an advocate for scleroderma since the beginning of her diagnosis in 2001, participating in lectures, panels, and events to spread awareness for the disease. Amy's also recently co-founded a nonprofit organization called Shout International, whose purpose is to provide economic relief to scleroderma patients in need. So Amy, I'll hand it over to you and welcome.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I just wanted to quickly say thank you to Scleroderma Atlantic for letting me be here today. I think it's a great opportunity, and like Jason said, my name is Amy Gietzen. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I was diagnosed with systemic scleroderma at the age of 19. I kind of started out with some joint pain, and I didn't really know, what it was, and it continued to get worse. I kind of just chalked it up to wear and tear, because at that time I was working at a nursing home. As it got worse, I kind of figured I needed to go get it checked out, and I wouldn't say I'm lucky, because I think anyone getting diagnosed with scleroderma, you're not lucky, but I was fortunate enough to be diagnosed pretty early on. With Buffalo, there wasn't a lot of people who really knew what scleroderma was. So I have to say I was guilty of just kind of finding a mediocre doctor and just accepting what they said. I didn't really want to accept my diagnosis just then. I was a young kid almost, and just starting college, so it was really hard for me. About 2 years into my diagnosis, I was diagnosed with pulmonary fibrosis. That was really kind of a big wake-up call for me. It kind of hit me all at once, and at that time I started to get a lot of digital ulcers, which were a major issue for me and still are today. My toes, my fingertips, as you can see, I've had some self-amputations due to how severe they were. I ended up having to have sympathectomies on both of my hands. And after kind of seeing the way the doctors who did my surgery reacted to my scleroderma, and they knew so much about it, I kind of had a reality check where they, I decided, well, I need to kind of get a team and have people treat me who were, kind of know what they're doing and aren't just like a mediocre doctor. So I did my research. It took me 5 years to find my team in Pittsburgh, but it was kind of like my eyes were finally open, and I accepted that my disease really wasn't going away. I had all kinds of testing, and we kind of realized that my scleroderma is pretty fickle and doesn't really respond to medicine for a long period of time. And so over the past 6 years, I've been dealing with pretty severe cardiac issues, and it's kind of scary. And with your diagnosis of scleroderma comes all these other symptoms that you don't really know what they are or what's going to happen to you. But I'm extremely lucky to have my support system, my parents. I still live at home, and my dad's retired, so he really helps me out a lot with all my appointments. He's like my partner in crime, and he goes to all my advocacy things with me. And so it's been really great to kind of have my support with me all the time, and I'm really lucky to have that. So this year it was 20 years into my disease, and over the years I've struggled with accepting myself for the way I am. This disease changes everything about you, from your appearance to the way you speak and interact with others. And I've had a hard time trying to allow myself to feel like I'm enough. I've had to struggle from day one of my diagnosis to feel worthy of love and friendship, success and happiness. And this disease definitely makes it hard to pursue your goals and dreams. It has taken so many things away from me against my will. I'm no longer able to have children because of medicine, and I wasn't able to continue my college education of becoming a nurse. And scleroderma has really challenged me to push forward, and it's a constant battle with my self-confidence and self-worth. It's taken me 20 years of living with this disease to kind of finally accept that I'm a capable, successful, beautiful person that is worthy of everything I deserve. In spite of having this disease and all its challenges, scleroderma has taught me to not be scared of the unknown. Life is so unpredictable with this disease, and I've learned to embrace the chaos that is my life and to find humor in the hard stuff. Laughing beats crying any day of the week for me, and scleroderma is life-changing, as I'm sure all of you watching know this. It's debilitating, scary, frustrating. It can be lonely and heartbreaking at times, and it's like an uninvited house guest that shows up and just barges in and just shovels your life and then won't leave, right? So, however, like an unwanted guest, you kind of have to learn to live with them and eventually grow to accept their place in your life, and you just adjust your life and expectations to accommodate this unwanted guest. Scleroderma is definitely an unwanted guest in my life. It's messy, it's inconvenient, it's rude and unpredictable, but if you lean on your support system and the people who love you, you can push forward. The one major advice that I could give to anyone living with this disease is to educate yourself. Do your homework. No, you're the only one that knows your body, and you can sense when something isn't right. Be a part of your healthcare management, and you will find that in doing so, you will feel empowered and confident that you're receiving the best care possible because you're a part of that treatment plan. Scleroderma has taught me so much about myself, and I've made so many amazing lifelong friends along the way. I have grown so much as a person, and I have had successes and failures along the way. I've had to overcome things, and I've had setbacks, and I've had to push through some pretty dark times. But through it all, I've stayed true to the person that I am, and life is hard. It's even harder with a disease like scleroderma. And the disease that has no cure. But like I said, if you really lean in and embrace your life, good, bad, and ugly, life can also be so fulfilling and amazing. And nothing can prepare you for a diagnosis of scleroderma. It's been 20 years of chaos for me, and there's a lot of love and laughter, but there's also a lot of pain and hardship and loss. And I would not change a thing. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Amy, for sharing. And the words, I think, embrace chaos. That's, I think, certainly things that people, certainly words that everyone can live by. So that's great. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Maya Kellops Clerk, and Maya's been a scleroderma patient since 2014. She's a run-walk coordinator for the Edmonton area in Canada. Having been a stem cell transplant recipient in 2016, she's attended meetings in Montreal to help establish guidelines in determining stem cell candidates among those who are living with scleroderma. She's worked closely and has done news and radio interviews regarding stem cell transplantation for the University of Alberta research team, which is excellent. And she did speak at the Scleroderma Canada National Conference in 2018. So Maya, welcome.
I gotta start off with mine is nowhere well as prepared as Amy's. So yeah, I just, again, thanks for Scleroderma Atlantic for having me here today. I'm originally from the East Coast, so I appreciate that, and currently residing in Alberta. So I was diagnosed with scleroderma in 2014. I was 28. I had just recently finished my apprenticeship for electrician in the trades, and my symptoms had started 2 years probably prior to when I was diagnosed. My first symptoms were Raynaud's that I complained to my doctor about multiple times and was given the brush off of just stay warm and keep your stress levels down and things like that. I kept going in and complaining. And the final straw for me was when I went to write my final exam for my apprenticeship. My hands were so numb from not only the stress, but the atmosphere of the exam room that I couldn't even hold the pencil in my hands because my hands were completely numb. And that was really a turning point for me. So I did go into the doctor, and he was at that point referring me to a specialist. And I think the turning point for the doctor was when I had mentioned that I thought I had a nail infection from getting manicures, because I noticed that my cuticles were really hard and hard to push back, and there was small little vascular showings in the cuticle beds. So I was fortunate that it was caught fairly early. I did only go the 2 years prior to diagnosis. So I finished my apprenticeship in December of 2013. And by April of 2014, I was diagnosed with scleroderma. They told me not to worry, it was just early. And they referred me to another doctor to get confirming of diagnosis, because my doctor was new and fresh out of school. So he just wanted me to go to see his I can't even think of the word, I'm so sorry, his main guy, that he just wanted a second opinion. So I went to see him. He did confirm that it was scleroderma, but not to worry, it was really early. I didn't get much information. You know, I left that appointment in kind of a daze and wondering what to do. And I was told to just Google the disease, but don't worry, because, you know, you're going to read some really, really horrible stories, but not to worry that I'm not in that situation. And that I'd have to go for annual testing to check my lungs and stuff to make sure that it didn't progress. By September of that year, I'd actually gone for my first PFT, in which I found out that my lungs were severely compromised. And they confirmed at that point that the disease was actually systemic and not limited like they were originally thinking. And so immediately, you know, I have my husband, he's like a huge supporter, and he immediately started researching. And I mean, anybody that knows me, if they know my husband, he, you know, before we even got married, I think he took 5 years to research diamonds before he even proposed. So he was researching all kinds of stuff about the disease, and he came across a group on Facebook for stem cell transplants for pioneers that were receiving this treatment, mostly in Chicago, but in the United States. And he gave me the information, and we looked into it, and we were actually pursuing the option. We had contacted some doctors in Canada, and they weren't taking people for stem cell transplants in Canada at the time. So we were, you know, trying to save every dollar that we could and raise money to go to Chicago for testing and for stem cell transplant, because we just really felt that this was, you know, new treatment, kind of the way of the future for certain types of the disease, because I can't really say it's for all types of the disease. And we started that. And then I also put my name on the list for Russia, because it was a third of the cost of Chicago, at which point I transferred to a different doctor because my doctor had shut down his practice. And when I saw that doctor and he heard me mention going to Russia, he immediately asked if he could get in contact with physicians in Calgary that were doing the stem cell transplants previously. Again, by luck, I got in really, really quick. I think that was also December, maybe January of 2015, 2016. And by March, I was down in Calgary meeting with Dr. Storick and Dr. Leclerc at the time for stem cell transplant. They didn't give me a huge option. They told me that I had to do it quicker than later. You know, being in my early 30s, and my sister-in-law was getting married and I was to be a bridesmaid in her wedding. I wanted to wait until after August so I could be in her wedding. I didn't want to let her down. But we just started the process, and I had my stem cell transplant started in May 2016, and my actual transplant date was August 2nd of 2016. One option that my husband and I took, where, you know, a young newly married couple, we were fortunate enough that with money that we had saved and not gone to the United States or Russia for the treatment, we were able to freeze embryos before I had the major cancer, or the major chemo treatment for the stem cell transplant. And we saved embryos so that later on we could see whether it was an option for us to go through with IVF in the future for me, or whatever options that came up with. And I had the transplant, and then I started showing really, really great signs. I was doing really, really good, especially the first year after the transplant. And then we decided to go ahead. The doctors weren't on board with me carrying a child myself due to the health concerns that the scleroderma had caused. So we had a friend that stepped forward and offered to be a surrogate for us. So we did multiple attempts, and then we had a successful transfer, and she was our surrogate for our daughter that was born in 2018. So that was, you know, a huge, huge thing for us. And we thought at that point, when we had sought that option, that, you know, everything was going good post-transplant, that things were really looking up. And then shortly, I'd say about a year after she was born, things did start to deplete again for me. So I had to go back on immunosuppressive therapies. And then recently, despite stabilization in lung function and things like that, they were seeing that my O2 levels for saturation were depleting. So I recently did get put on oxygen. But, you know, I still stand by that I had the stem cell transplant, and I'd do it again. And that was my main course of treatment. And, you know, it definitely slowed down the aggressiveness from when I was originally diagnosed in 2014 with how fast things had progressed. And I just hope that it gives me as normal of a life that I can with a to-be 3-year-old and everything that goes with it. And I just try and give back to doing, helping with the walks in Edmonton and bringing awareness to scleroderma, trying to get landmarks lit up, and answer questions for people that might have questions regarding stem cell transplants in Canada, or guide them to the page for the United States ones. And yeah, that's my story.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Maya. That's a fascinating story. Certainly, you've been through a lot. That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Next up, we have Joey Goodbread, who's a scleroderma patient who was diagnosed in December of 1996. However, it's known that she's had symptomatic signs for well over 3 decades. She previously served on the Scleroderma Foundation Board and was a co-chair of the National Advocacy Committee. Joey also served on the Scleroderma Foundation Missouri chapter, where she worked extensively on fundraising and advocacy. She's worked closely with a pharmaceutical company to get the word out about pulmonary fibrosis, IPF. Joey has spent many years advocating for better awareness, more education, and dedicated government funding for scleroderma and other autoimmune diseases. So welcome, Joey.
Thank you. My name is Joey, and it's also pronounced joie in French. And I would like to thank you for inviting me to attend and participate. People that are newly diagnosed, not even newly diagnosed, that have been diagnosed for a while, have trouble wrapping their head around everything that goes on. When I was diagnosed, it was very simple symptoms. I had a blood blister on my little toe, and then I had vasculitis on my thumb, and my doctor just put 2 and 2 together. I told him I had vasculitis prior to that on my big toe, and so he ran the tests. He expected me to have lupus because of the vasculitis on my thumb. No, I'm the lucky one that gets Raynaud's and lupus for scleroderma. So nothing is ever normal. And it's difficult. I was very early on in active symptoms to be diagnosed with just those 2 little things. As we look through my life, we could go back and see different things that had happened that actually were part of the scleroderma. I had been diagnosed with IBS, severe IBS. Well, we know the scleroderma has a lot of problems with the GI. I had heartburn, I had GERD. But thousands of people have this, so you don't think there's anything else going on. You just assume that this is something little going on. And it can be very daunting when they come back to you and say, no, now you've got pulmonary fibrosis. You've gone into renal crisis in the first 9 months of your diagnosis. In fact, when I was diagnosed in 96, 97 is when I had the renal crisis, and that's what most patients died from at that time. They didn't die, they were on dialysis transplant. So I survived that. Yeah, I'm very happy to say I was 1 of 7 in the country at the time. My doctor was excellent. It took a long time to get good doctors, and I've now got them. Now they're all starting to retire. But as far as dealing with the disease, you don't know what today's going to bring. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So I'm trying to live by something I read in a book. It's Scleroderma 101, written by an author that is a scleroderma researcher, Dr. Maureen Mays. And she said that she tells her patients to have different lists for different things, meaning that the night before you want to get XYZ done, write it down on your list. And when you wake up in the morning, there's no way you're going to be able to get it done. Move to list B and just keep going until you find where you can get something accomplished that day, which validates you. And don't beat up on yourself because you couldn't do what you really wanted to get done. It'll happen. You get it done, just not like you used to be able to. And it's scary because you turn around, and the first rheumatologist I went to, she said, oh, well, there's not much we can do for scleroderma. We can treat you symptomatically, but my advice is to go home and get your affairs in order. You've got maybe 5 years to live. That was 24 years ago. And what we knew later was 3 decades before that, I had started with it. So I was about 4.5, and there was a growth on my leg. I went through a lot of testing for it. Nobody could figure it out. When I was 17, two doctors came into the dermatology clinic and they said, "Oh yeah, we've seen that before." Mind you, I'm 17 with my mother not in the room, nobody there to help me. And the other doctor says, "Oh yeah, I've seen that. I had a patient die of it." What do you do at 17 years old? I mean, these doctors are not always as kind as they should be. I have, sometimes they are arrogant. I have my joke that is, what's the difference between God and doctors? God doesn't pretend to be a doctor. Sometimes our doctors do pretend to be God, and they know so much more. They don't. A lot of times I have found that I'm teaching them as much as they're learning. They don't get the education in school, so it's up to the patients to work on this. It's up to the patients to stand up for themselves. It's not just advocacy in front of the government, it's advocating for a better life for us. My husband and I just had a talk, and he was great when I was diagnosed. It was a devastating thing. And he looked at me and he said, this does get very emotional, "This is not your disease, it's our disease." So I've had him as my support as Amy's had her family. And he retired several years ago and then took up a part-time job to keep busy. But he's there and he understands that it takes a lot of work to get it done. One of the things people don't ever talk about is how long it takes you to get a week's worth of pills put together. And how do you keep track of them? And how do you make sure you have the refills when you need them? And what time of day do you take them? I've gotten so organized with it that I've got a sheet that I hand when I go to the hospital, and it just doesn't tell them what I'm taking. It tells them when I take it, including the times, because if I get admitted, they like to give it to you at different times. And that messes me up completely. And which doctor prescribed it and why, because so many drugs have double meanings and they can do a lot of things. So they need to know why I'm taking it. And that's made a huge difference. If I keep on that schedule, keep positive, surround myself by other positive scleroderma patients, have our pity parties when we need them, but know that we aren't alone. There's a lot of us out here, and a lot of us are willing to share and listen. And I've got big shoulders, so I always tell people, there's a shoulder there for you. All you have to do is call. I've been through a lot. I had the renal crisis. I had a severe case of pneumonia where I nearly died. I had a bowel obstruction. Had from the scleroderma, lack of oxygen and circulation in my face, my bones in the jaws disintegrated. And I had to have bilateral custom jaw replacement, which was a 9.5-hour surgery. While you're on oxygen, you've got renal insufficiency and a GI system that doesn't work well. It was that or a feeding tube. I chose surgery because I wanted to live. I didn't want to be stuck on a feeding tube and know that really was going to be about 5 years of life. So I took the chance on that, and I came out ahead. I was only given 20% chance to live. I knew I'd do it. My doctor said, if anybody could, I would. I'm your miracle child. But then, and I also, last year, survived a pretty serious bout of COVID. Surprised the doctors with all of that as well. They expected me to be in the hospital for over a month, maybe longer. And I responded to the treatments so well that I was home in 5 days. Nobody could believe it. The doctors said, "You've done it again. It's another miracle." So it's the positiveness, it's the support, it's taking your meds, it's getting enough sleep, it's voicing what you really feel and doing things. Most important thing, you're still a human being. You need to be treated as a human being, not as a poor little sick thing put up on a shelf. And you need to live life. We learned early on that you never know how much time we have. Every day is key. And we don't have to sit back and say, okay, there's no treatments, there's no cure. They're getting closer every day. The people that are newly diagnosed need to really get involved with clinical trials. That's how we're going to find better treatments and better, possibly the cure. Hopefully my lifetime, if not the next generation. But we have to be there and we have to support everyone, support each other. Like we started shout, because there's a lot of things people can't afford to do. Like go to another state if necessary to get their treatments. When you have support like Amy and I do, men in our lives are just invaluable. And the last thing I would say is when you do ask for help, don't ever take it for granted. Always make sure you thank the person, because you don't know how much they appreciate the fact that you trusted them with your help. And want to help you. So make sure that they know. Other than that, get up every morning, put your feet on the floor and go. Try and do as much as you can. If it's a day that you have to stay in bed because you can't move, it's hurting too much, that's okay. You've got a phone there. You can call the elected officials and start harping on them about needing more funding. And that's what we do. So it's a good team. I'm glad to be working with Amy on another project as well. And we have our little pity parties and we laugh at some of the craziest things that happen to us. They happen to all the patients. So thank you. And I hope it gives a little bit of confidence to some of the people that are seeing this. It can be done. It can be overcome. I was told 5 years, it's 24 years. They don't know. Only the man upstairs can tell you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Certainly the positive attitude, I think, is gets a lot of people, it takes them a long way. So resilience, I think, also comes to mind when I hear your story, and you've been very resilient through your journey. So thank you very much for sharing. And next we have we'll call it a mother-son duo. We have Matthew Williams, and Matthew lives in Houston, Texas, and is 16 years old. In 2015, he was diagnosed with diffuse systemic scleroderma, and he is here with us today to share how this diagnosis impacted and changed his life. And perhaps I'll also introduce his mother at the same time, Natalie Garcia Williams. Scleroderma has taught her a lot about the disease and how to support her son through his journey. So through her involvement with the scleroderma community, Natalie feels blessed to have gained another family, which is really, really good to hear. So welcome. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Williams. I was diagnosed with systemic diffuse juvenile scleroderma in 2015. In the beginning, I was confused and I didn't really know what much to think about the disease and all that. And I was wondering, when I was first diagnosed, I was confused on what would come with it. And when we first started noticing symptoms, I was in boxing, and me and my trainer noticed that I couldn't make a fist anymore and things like that. So he told us to start looking into it. And in the beginning of looking into it, they were telling me and my mom that it was just behavioral issues and that I needed therapy and all kinds of things like that. And it wasn't until we went to the eye doctor and he gave us a number to call, and we called it, and he told us about scleroderma and all that. So the eye doctor's the one that actually pretty much diagnosed me. But we ended up going to the doctor, and he told us everything about it. Pretty much about it, the diagnosis. And the treatments, the ones that work best for me are the Rintail shots and Gamma Guard IVIG. And one thing that scleroderma has taught me is that you just gotta live your life, push through all the obstacles that come with this disease. That's about it.
I'm Matthew's mom. Like he said, he was in boxing and his coach told me that he couldn't move his hands and he couldn't move his neck. So I started taking him to the doctor. They told us that there was wrong with him, that it was a behavioral issue. And he's right. We went to the eye doctor and he told us that it could be scleroderma, that he might have uveitis in his eyes. So we went to a different primary care physician who sent us to a rheumatologist, Dr. Kamdar. And as soon as he seen Matthew, he said, well, I know he has scleroderma, but I don't know what kind. So we're going to run some panels and see what kind. We went back, we found out that it was, diffuse systemic scleroderma. And he told us, don't go home and Google anything. He said, he gave me the Scleroderma Foundation pamphlet, the Texas Bluebonnet. And he said, get in contact with them and you learn from them. And that's what we did. At first we were in denial, but when we see Matthew started changing, we ended up getting a hold of Jacob. We started going to the meetings. We started joining the walks and taking part in them. We started our own page called Generation Matthew. Well, scleroderma can suck it. And then on the back, it says Generation Matthew. So we try to get involved. We've connected with Wyatt the Warrior on several occasions and, love what he's doing over there. And we stay in contact with Jacob a lot because he's the one that informs us a lot. We've joined the San Antonio walks and been involved there. We try to stay active. I try to push him to stay active as his mother. I feel like he needs to move more, stretch a little bit more because he's very stiff already. At 16, he's had to compromise many things in his life. And it's very, very hard. I mean, from us having to change the doorknobs out on the doors because he can't grip it to change it, to turn it. Buying little things so he can grip to open a 20-ounce soda, just little things. So having to change from doing boxing, football, basketball, all those things have changed for him. So scleroderma is hard, but it's here. So we're learning to manage it every day. Every day we learn something, like we learned the other day that one of Matthew's shoulders is stiffer than the other because I was trying to massage him and I can get one up higher and I couldn't get the other one up at all. So, I was like, we need to work more on this side. So it's just different things that we learn every day. I think the hardest part for me as his mother is the stress that he has, the stress that comes with having to just do everything, the medications, keeping up with his movement, taking a shower to break loose because he's so stiff, being in pain. Well, that's my biggest thing is not being able to fix it. As a mom, we want to fix everything for our kids, and I can't fix this for him. So I've learned that I can't control everything, and it's hard. It's hard as a mom that you can't control everything and fix it. So watching him through pain, not only mentally, but physically, the mental part, because he's lost so many friends, before he was active, he had a lot of friends. People don't understand what's going on with him, why he can't play the same way, why he can't ride the same way, like ride his bike, why he can't run, he has lung disease. So many things have came with this disease, rheumatoid arthritis, loss of bone density. He's had to have a cough assist vest and just all kinds of things that's come. So I guess just adjusting to everything and still being able to be a kid. Like, it's hard to watch your kid not be able to be a kid. So our biggest thing is to spread awareness and just to keep people informed. We're constantly handing out wristbands just so people will know what scleroderma is. They look at them and they think, well, at first nothing's wrong with them. But when they take that closer look and they start examining his hands, his elbows, they see that his fingers have stopped growing. They've already curling. He can't open his hands like we can. He can't make the fist like we can. He can't open. And it's just hard because some people understand it and some people are very ugly behind it. So trying to weigh out, how to react emotionally to certain situations is another thing. Let me take my lunch real quick. And again, just teaching him how to not let this disease take a hold of him, for him to try to control it, you know, for him to listen to himself. And also right now we're learning, well, he's learning how to go see the doctor by himself, to do his prescriptions by himself, reorder them, to set his appointments. He told me that, Mom, I need to go see the doctor. He has another callus coming up on his elbow. I said, well, call the doctor. You know, he's like, I can't do that, Mom. I said, yes, I already told you. He said, no, you didn't. The list is sitting right here underneath my glass on my office. So I said, all your doctors are right there. Make the phone call. You got to start. He's 16. We have 6 months away from 17. So I'm trying to get him to adjust to being an adult and taking over some of these responsibilities. So it's hard, but we're here. And I'm just glad that I do have the support system. He has a big support system. And I'm just glad that we have that, because in many aspects, it helps me as well. You know, there's so many things that I have to let loose, and they're always there to help us. So it's a beautiful thing. And I greatly appreciate y'all for letting us be here and inviting us to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's great to get the perspective from the caregiver, from the mother side of things as well. So I think that's certainly something that we don't always hear. So thank you very much for sharing for your story as well. And thank you to everyone for sharing their stories with us today. Of course, it is time for questions. If anyone out there does have questions, either for a specific panelist or for all the panelists, please just use the Q&A icon, either at the bottom of your tablet or the top of your computer, in order to submit a question. Again, you can submit a question to all of our panelists or just one in particular. And we do have a question, so I will start off for Natalie, actually. And actually, it's a very poignant question in terms of, you talked about sort of supporting Matthew, but the question is, what supports do you have? Of course, it's very important that you have supports as well. So how do you get through this?
Well, I actually have another group that I run called Good Vibes Only. When Matthew started experiencing things, I was really heavy. I was really, really big. So one of my ways to deal with my stress is I work out every day. And so I have a lot of women that come see me. So I have my group, and we all go out to eat lunch, once a week. We work out, we plan different events with us and the kids. So that's my support group as far as just for my mental health. I also talk to my therapist that I've talked to since I was 15 years old, and she's helped me too. I call Jacob all the time whenever Matthew gets angry and I don't know how to deal with things sometimes. So I call Jacob, and he helps me because he lived with this as a teenager coming up. So I greatly appreciate him so much, because he is one of my biggest supports as far as that mental, because there's times that I don't know what to do or what to say to him or how to help him, and they help me. They're like, well, just calm down, this is how you can do this, or let me come pick him up and take him out for a little bit, get things off his mind. So that way for Matthew, I mean, it's a big support group. All of my friends and family, all his friends and family, our church, everybody, like his godparents. It's a big group. Whenever we do the walks, that's why we haven't been able to do it. This is our second year that we haven't been able to do the walk due to COVID. But I'm hoping it gets started soon so we can come together, because we haven't been able to come together in a long time because of this.
I think we're certainly all in that same boat. The same thing here as well. Everything's virtual this year for the run walks. So yeah, it's definitely, times are changing, but hopefully changing for the better again next year. A question for Matthew as well. And the question is, Matthew, have you met other young people who have scleroderma?
I've met about 4 or 5 people around my age that have had it. And I mean, that have it.
A question for Maya. Is there anything you wish you'd have known before you had the stem cell transplant?
The only thing I can say is that, I wish I had known better not to have as false of a hope and thinking it was going to be, this magical cure, because I knew it wasn't, but I still kind of had the hope that it was. And a lot of people think that about that treatment. But anything otherwise, we really did our research for everything before it going into the procedure. And like, there's some great Facebook groups out there that with other people that have had experience with stem cell transplants. So there wasn't really anything going into it that I wasn't already expecting. So there wasn't a whole lot, no.
And another question that I think would be great for all panelists, of course, we just mentioned COVID, and it's been an interesting year all the way around. So just curious to see how you've lived with COVID or in the COVID world over the past year, and how has the pandemic impacted on your care? So perhaps we'll start with Amy and work our way around.
Sure. So for me, I really utilized the telemedicine aspect of going to the doctor and things like that, just because I'm so immunosuppressed from my medications. And honestly, I've never did a telemedicine visit until the pandemic. And it's not the same as going in and having them touch your skin and listen to your lungs and your heart, but it's better than not having been seen at all. And so that has really helped me kind of get through it. And also having those conversations with my doctors and being able to see them and talk to them about the vaccine and about my problems, and feel like you're connecting even though it's through the computer or your tablet. That has kind of helped me and made me feel more secure about my care, even though I can't go in and physically be there.
Joey, did you want to provide a comment?
Well, after surviving COVID, I can say we took all the precautions that we thought we could take, but it still happened. And my husband also had it, but he was asymptomatic for nothing. But me, I ended up in the hospital, and that they felt that my lungs, because of the pulmonary fibrosis, were going to be a severe problem. I still wear a mask. We just released in a lot of cases that you don't have to wear them. I'm still wearing my masks. I don't know what other germs somebody else has. We know that suppressed patients, they're looking at that because it doesn't seem that they build the antibodies as fast. So I'll wear that mask along with the booster shots and whatever else it takes to protect myself from that, because wearing a mask is minor compared to being able to get out and do something. And you got to think about other people. What if you're the carrier? That's also, they're looking at that. Like, they have found that transplant patients of organs and certain people on cyclophosphamide, they're studying right now because they are not building the antibodies. My advice: stay with the masks, wash your hands frequently, and wipe down surfaces. Don't go to the grocery store and not wipe down the cart handles because you don't know what's been there. And I have a lot of cabin fever, so we're trying to deal with that right now, because I'm not a person to stay home and not do this. I have to get and do it. It's hard, but and I'm still recovering. Even though COVID was in November, I still have effects of it, and that's going to continue for a while. So live with it.
Definitely an interesting perspective, that's for sure. That's a lot to go through.
Yeah, it has been a wild ride.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But I've shown I'm strong and I'm resilient. And my husband says I'm mean as a snake, so it's not going to get me. I'll get it. So we live by those things.
It's great.
Thanks.
Maya, comment on living in the COVID world? Oh, you're on mute. Maya, you're on mute.
Sorry, there we go. I actually really enjoy the telephone medicine. I find it great. I get so many more appointments in with doctors, and you know, having an almost 3-year-old and trying to balance her and her being needy and stuff, it's much easier than having to drive into a doctor's appointment and physically go in when I can just have a phone call, or even like some of them have been over like messaging services and stuff like that when it comes to test results if something pops up really quick. So on that aspect, I actually really enjoy it, not having to go into the office every single visit, especially when you're seeing, you know, umpteen different specialists, and every one of them is every 3 months. Sorry, my husband's just making faces at me. Yeah, sorry. So instead of going into umpteen different appointments, and you know, you have so many specialists and trying to balance going, you know, every 3 to 6 months for those specialists, and I'm sure everybody knows it's like a full-time job just going in to see all your specialists and things like that. And then, you know, for the negative aspect, it's been really hard. You know, I'm a pretty social person, and having to stay in the house, and my husband and I have had, you know, many arguments about me wanting to go out. I might have a little bit of a shopping problem. So, you know, an increased amount of parcels showing up on the doorstep, because not being able to get to the stores as often, and things like that, and seeing friends and stuff, and him, you know, instilling that again as memories that I am immunocompromised, and stuff that I tend to take for advantage, and just want to go anyway, because I don't like to stay home. So that part has been hard, but hopefully things are nearing the end, and vaccines and stuff like that across Canada, and you know, the US has come so far with their vaccines, so hopefully, you know, that all opens up, and you know, travel and stuff like that again.
Fingers crossed, and good job considering he was making faces at you. Natalie and Matthew, any comments regarding COVID and living in the COVID world?
Yes, so Matthew still goes to see his doctor. I think we had one video call. Yeah, we had one video call. Matthew is a little daredevil. He traveled all the United States, everywhere, with his uncle during COVID. Thankfully, he didn't ever get anything. He was fine. But the only thing that we did was we locked our house down when we first found out about COVID. And some people were upset with us because I wouldn't let anybody come over. I mean, as that changed, you know, we started letting people come, because I'm a social bee too, and I teach a Zumba class and a weight training class. You know, he has his friends that always come over, and this is, how do you say, they're like rescue little place. Whenever they're in trouble or whatever, they come see us, and they just stay here with Matthew. And so we didn't really change much besides the mask and the hand sanitizer.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for all the questions. Those were some great questions. So certainly a big, huge thank you to everybody, all of our panelists today, for joining us and sharing their stories, and sharing, you know, the information, your background, your journey. I think is very, very interesting. Everyone's journey with scleroderma is different, so it's always good to hear the different perspectives. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, is that it's not going to affect the same person or different people the same way. So I think it's really important to hear the different journeys, and their journey is what you make it to be. So I think, thank you very much for sharing. And thank you for attending, everyone out there. We are going to be continuing the webinar series this fall. We're going to be taking a break for the summer, now that the weather is turning nicer and it's 20 degrees outside, and people don't necessarily want to be sitting in front of a computer, but we are going to be resuming this fall with another series of webinars. Of course, we want to thank the sponsors, the Government of Canada Emergency Community Support Fund and the Community Foundation of Nova Scotia for helping us put this on. So thank you very much for that. And we are going to be launching, of course, we just talked about the run walks that happen across North America for scleroderma. Of course, this year, everything, certainly in Canada, I'm assuming in the US is probably mostly virtual as well. So putting a plug in for what we're going to be kicking off here in Atlantic Canada starting tomorrow. We're starting our virtual run walk campaign, and you can get the details on sclerodermaatlantic.ca. So certainly, check in there starting tomorrow. The website will be updated and some information in terms of how you can participate and some great prizes you'll be able to get along the way as well. So once again, I do want to thank you all for joining us here this afternoon. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for everyone, all the participants for joining in on this Sunday afternoon. I hope you did take away some positive things from the panelist conversations today. I know I did. Like I say, resilience is something I think that I just keep coming back to time and time again. It's just important to have that positive attitude, like Joy mentioned to us, and just getting through one day at a time. So it's great. Thank you for sharing. And again, thank you to everyone for joining. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your Sunday. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. You too.
Bye-bye.